Alright, sup fellow citizens, welcome back to the Path of Rage and our Star Citizen weekly briefing. We got a new PTU patch to go over and a buttload of information that Jared and Benoit Beausejour dropped on Star Citizen Live this week that, yeah, they went into the weeds and answered a ton of questions. We got a lot to go over, so let's get into it. First up, the new PTU patch is available for all backers right now, bringing stability and bug fixes, as always, the third wing to the Onyx facilities, the Medgel respawn resource for the new med beds that come with the brand new Apollo ships, medical ships that people can play in the current PTU if they bought for store money. It's not available for anyone who hasn't bought it that way, but you can see it in game if somebody you know or just you run across someone in the game with it. Pyro sees the addition of watchtowers at the outposts and NPC backup that'll arrive in dropships now. That is finally in the game. The new Volt LMG, which I haven't got my hands on yet, but can't wait to try out. The ship armor and ballistic damage changes that we talked about last week. And a bit more of an adjustment, I would say, on how the medbed works. They've changed the amount of metagel that needs to be used for the different tier beds, going down in cost the higher tier of the bed. You'll only be charged once for the highest tier bed that the player has, no matter how many injuries you have healed at once or how few. You only be charged once for it. And they played around with the distances where you can spawn away from that med bed. So tier 1 is 75 million kilometers, tier 2 is 8,000 kilometers, and tier 3 is 50 kilometers. Now, without further ado, we will get into the true meat and potatoes of this video, and that is the Star Citizen Live talk that Jared had with Benoit Beausejour. Benoit went into the weeds answering a ton of questions for us, as I said. It was 3 hours long. This video is going to be a fair length as I go over it and kind of try to sum it up for you guys. But if you're really interested in most of these answers and you want to hear more in depth, I'll link it in the description below. I highly suggest you give it the time to listen to, because they did release a lot of info. So they focused on 4 different areas throughout the 3 hours. The first was what they termed the year of playability. The second was all about server meshing. The third were the big ticket items and ongoing challenges that they've been having to fix and encounter, like the freight elevators and and what that we've all been reporting. And they finally had like the wrap up where they just had a few general question and answer type things. Like I said, this is a lot of information. So, when asked about the improvements that have been made to the server performance and the stability of the game, Benoit went back and started with when he was getting involved in this at the level he is last year, when we had only one server running the entire system. He pointed out the fact that the average server FPS has risen from roughly about 4, which was pre-server meshing, to around 20-ish, usually a fairly steady right now, and going from 100 players maximum to they've been pushing 800, and they've had tests where they've done a bit more than that. He also pointed out that the session lengths that we players have been engaging in before logging off or whatnot have been getting better, like a 10-fold increase, due to better persistence and load distribution, and this is tracked by territories and planetary volumes. Again, he went right into the weeds about it. And to be fair, unless you're being incredibly nitpicky to CIG, in my personal opinion, the change in stability of the servers and how long I'm spending in the game compared to last year is night and day. Oh, there are still problems. They're absolutely problems. You guys have seen them in the videos of my gameplay in the background when I do those. It's still a lot better. Now, when asked about how this was coming about, the idea of hero squads at CIG came up, and how these hero squads or hero teams are helping to fix major issues. So what Benoit said is that they now have dedicated teams targeting entire feature sets like the transit system, like the elevators, like FTC, whatever it is. They're only focused on that. But they've also put the QA testers into those hero squads. And these guys focus on fixing those high impact bugs that are affecting all of us, like the freight elevators. That comes up a lot in this video, and rightly so. Part of this was how the QA process has evolved to reduce the numbers of regressions where bugs come back that they thought were fixed, or the bugs that keep hitting us players over and over again. So now with how these teams work, they have what they call an embedded green light. And these are embedded QA specialists in the team, and they have power to veto over the changes. So the code changes won't be sent out to be put into the main branch and onto live and the PTU, or will experience it, until these guys say, like the QA specialists say, yes, this is ready to go. And between them having the power to cancel a release, they also have to do root cause explanations and kind of post-change verifications of how these will affect the systems. And Benoit says apparently that this has been cutting the regressions and just mistakes made significantly. Another part of this overall performance and stability thing was what Benoit called the hygiene initiatives, where they're making a concerted effort to, on the programming side, obviously clean up error logs and warnings and engine reports, and just try to get everything a bit more stable and the engine functioning a little bit more smoothly. After which, Jared asked about the purpose of tech previews. The current one, what's coming up, all that. The ongoing tech preview that we just had was all about Vulkan and testing out a bunch of the new graphical options that are going to be coming to the game, being brought over from Squadron 42. The next tech preview that they plan to do is going to be for engineering gameplay, and they want to have people publicly accessing and trying engineering this year. Although Benoit didn't make any promises on that, they do want to get engineering into our hands this year. And one of the other questions that was asked about performance and stability was, why not just do daily resets for server maintenance? You know, once a day, just turn them off. And Benoit was explaining that they don't really work well, daily ones, due to the data persistence corruption that can occur. So they do maintenance windows, and they do spin up fresh shards and fresh servers as needed, and they're moving towards more regular schedules. And the way they do hot fixes now, though, instead of just doing all at once, they kind of roll them out server by server, shard by shard, as they cycle the old shards out or turn off servers that need to be repaired. But for right now, with the way persistence works, daily server resets aren't really a viable choice for them. For the second block featuring server meshing and networking and scalability in that area, first was the question of static server meshing and how it's performed since launch, what optimizations have been made to it. And Benoit says it's been running for 9 months with 10 servers for shard, distributing key areas. Configurations are adjusted per patch, where they could boost events like Hathor or ASD. Performance issues like desync, rubber banding, those things have been reduced by various load balancing lessons that they've learned and how to spread the information around a little bit. But also on top of that, the content and tech teams are now coordinating a bit better to avoid overloading a clustered area, which that became very apparent in the resource missions where everybody was showing up at the same few freight elevator outposts and causing such a problem. Jared asked him to explain what the hybrid component that Benoit constantly refers to is in the networking and why it's important. And Benoit says that this is a replication layer that's separate from the simulation on the game server, so it improves sync and reduces lag because it's kind of between your client and the server, which it sounds counterintuitive, but it's connected in a way to the central Star Citizen 3D authority mapping versus the 2D grids in other games. And it just allows the players to connect to that so that information can be transmitted more smoothly. Which of course brought up the question of dynamic server meshing, which they've long claimed is the full end goal of the networking, and how that will differ from static server meshing, and apparently it will enable an arbitrary universe subdivision, the way they can divide and allocate resources in streaming groups. So moving like a busy area of Area 18 to a server all on its own. That's the goal for that, and it helps spread the load again. And they can spin up the servers as they need, instead of still being limited like they are with the static server meshing. It kind of shares the tech with the instancing as well, and he did stress that it's not going to launch as one big update. Here's dynamic server meshing. Boom, bring it in PTU. No, they're going to bring it in incremental parts, and we'll feel it in the back end. Hopefully they plan on increasing player counts even more, but player counts aren't actually prioritized yet. That's something that will come along. They want to get the features tested and working first. They did acknowledge the fact that server meshing is not something that's unique to Star Citizen. Like some people think CIG likes to claim that server meshing is their own original idea. That's not the case at all. Benoit himself pointed out that even Ultima Online, the very first MMO, had a version of server meshing. The difference is with their engine and their game, how it works, with that no loading screens in that vast 3D place. It doesn't work with traditional server meshing methods. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Server meshing methods. Say that 5 times fast, folks. That was also part of the reason why they needed to make the hybrid model, to help with the scalability in this seamless universe. And apparently parallels with how instancing is going to work. That will also help with the load management overall with server meshing. They then got into the big ticket items and ongoing challenges, answering the questions about the high priority fixes needed and persistent player frustrations that we continually send in ICs about. The first one asked was, of course, what progress is being made on freight elevators and big bugs like that are really game breaking at times. And Benoit said a hero squad is tackling those issues directly right now. With the elevators, there were like faulty obstruction detection, desync between the UI platforms, content mismatches, entity cleanup needs to be touched up to prevent memory leaks. There's a whole bunch of things, but there is a team working specifically on elevators. And some of these systems that are under this stability focus are the transit systems, physics grids, event-specific load balancing. Beausejour says there's some surprises in upcoming releases for us, and there's a lot of ongoing work on performance in high player scenarios where there's a lot of us around, which is very, very good. Anyone who knows anything about Star Citizen, once you get enough players in a small enough area, frame rate just drops down to through the floor. So yeah, let's see some improvements to that. The next thing that they talked about was the roadmap for the Vulkan integration and what the graphics tech and how that all looks. And he talked about how that tech preview was testing Vulkan for better rendering efficiency, and the current graphics, they're aiming to enhance both the visuals and the dev tools to merge it all together without breaking playability for us. And all of these things that they were talking about, fixes of the transit system and the elevators, etc., etc., this is all being done because they all affect the player experience. It impacts us across the board. This is being done gradually while they fix them to avoid disruptions to us. So they also have the goals of higher player limits, fewer crashes, more predictable maintenance. There's no specific guideline of when they're going to get it done or when 1.0 is going to come out. But again, they're prioritizing the core loop stability of the game. When asked about the toughest bugs that are still being worked on, Benoit was talking about persistent data issues, physics and desync and edge cases, scalability for events. He went into length on about whiteboard sessions for the complex problems that they have to really think them out ahead of time. He was asked about how they balance the team for tech innovation alongside of content delivery, and he said that it's basically separate branches of teams. They can research and iterate systems in a separate branch without having to actually make engine overhauls for content delivery. And he was asked about any future updates for Squadron 42 tech overlap, because we do hear that stuff all the time. One of the benefits will be the shared tech from the mission scripting. That'll benefit both projects. The focus on the engineering for ship repairs to make that more intuitive. Some of that stuff is all coming over. And that's pretty much the better parts that I'm going to sum up for you right now. I, again, highly recommend, if you're interested in this project, put on the audio and listen to it, listen to what they have to say. But there is one thing I want to bring up in particular. And that was a part where Jared was saying that for Squadron 42, we will not see anything about Squadron 42 at CitizenCon this year, which kind of bums me out. I was hoping to see a bit more. He said the reason for it is because they set their line in the sand for 2026, so they have all the people who are working specifically on Squadron 42 just doing that. They're not preparing for a show or anything like. They're just, access to the grindstone, getting the work done. But as he was explaining all of that, he said the phrase, "We drew our line in the sand to get out by 2026." And then he said the phrase, "I don't know if we'll get there, but we're going to try our hardest." Something like, I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, but he did say, "I don't know if we're going to get there." And oh my God, people melted down. Because they immediately started assuming, with fairly decent reasons to do so, that meant that maybe a delay for Squadron 42 was coming out, that it wouldn't come out next year. There was a chance of that. And Jared actually had to go to the forums and post about this so to try and clear it up. So what he was saying was that he personally didn't know. He was trying to be pragmatic. He said, "Please don't mistake my pragmatism for any commentary on the status of the game. I just try very hard to speak as deliberately and plainly as I can without embellishment or hyperbole. I meant what I said in the most literal manner possible. I can't sit here and tell you what the future holds, because the entire history of video game development, who's ever been able to?" And you know what? Fair enough. I think it was just a poor choice of words. Like, you can, if you watch the video yourself like I did, you'll see that he is clearly just forming his thoughts, like thinking about something else while he's making that point. And that's just kind of how it slipped out. I hope it doesn't mean that there's a delay coming. That would suck huge. But that doesn't appear to be the case. It does appear that they are still on track with their projections. So we will see. Maybe CIG will hit a deadline. In any case, folks, that has been the update for this weekly briefing. Again, I'm going to say it for the third time. I highly suggest you guys click the link in the description below and watch the episode for yourself. You will get far more out of it than this summary that I just gave for you, but hopefully I brought it down to a more manageable format for you. If you found this video informative and helpful, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new and you want to see more. Sound off in the comments below. And until next time, I've been Rayjake Games, and I'll see you in the verse. Bye-bye.